Have you ever wondered if a single prayer made with an open heart could completely change the course of your life? Have you ever felt at your limit, not knowing where to turn, with nothing left to do but look up at the sky and ask, tears in your eyes, for an answer? What if I told you that sometimes the universe responds faster than we imagine, and that a single sincere request can make something extraordinary happen? This is the true story of Jessica Brown, a woman from the American Midwest who spent years carrying on her shoulders the weight of overdue bills, failed relationships, and a deep sense of emptiness. She had nothing special in the eyes of others. She was an ordinary, simple woman used to the quiet life of a small town. But behind her tired smile was a soul begging for change. And what happened after a heartfelt prayer will make you rethink the way you see life, destiny, and the invisible power of faith combined with the law of attraction. Jessica was born and raised in a small town in Iowa, surrounded by cornfields and a predictable routine. From an early age, she learned that life required hard work, but didn't always reward it fairly. Her parents were dedicated workers, but always faced financial difficulties, and this scarcity shaped the way she viewed the world. She grew up hearing phrases like, "Money doesn't fall from the sky," and "You can't have it all in life." These beliefs followed her silently like a shadow, even as she became an adult. In her youth, Jessica dreamed of leaving that small town, studying elsewhere, and building a different life. But reality was harsh. She had to drop out of school to work full-time, helping at home. Years went by, and her dreams were left behind. By the time she turned 30, her life seemed reduced to debts, frustrations, and a loneliness that hurt deeply in her chest. She worked at a local store, earning just enough to get by. Every month was the same struggle, choosing between paying the electricity bill or buying better food. The nights were long, often spent staring at the ceiling of her small, cold room with thoughts that consumed her. Is this all my life? Will I ever get out of this cycle? And it was during one of those desperate nights that everything began. It was winter. Snow covered the town streets, and the cold wind made the windows of her simple home creak. That day, Jessica had received a collection letter that brought her to tears. It was the bank's final warning. If she didn't pay part of the debt, she would lose the car she used to get to work. That car was her only means of transportation, and losing it would be like losing the little independence she still had. Sitting on the living room floor, hands trembling and eyes swollen from crying, Jessica did something she hadn't done in a long time. She prayed. But it wasn't a memorized prayer, nor words repeated without meaning. It was a silent cry coming from deep within, full of emotion. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered softly, "If there is something greater than me listening, please, I need help. I can't live like this anymore. Show me a path, give me a sign, anything, but please don't leave me alone." In that moment, Jessica felt something different. It wasn't a vision or an immediate answer, but a gentle calm flowed through her body, as if for the first time in a long while, someone had heard her pain. She couldn't explain it, but she went to sleep with the feeling that something had changed. The next morning, she woke with a racing heart, as if she were about to discover something. It was an ordinary workday, but small things began to catch her attention. Turning on the radio while making coffee, she heard a phrase that seemed directed at her. "What you ask for with faith is already on its way. Trust." Jessica froze for a few seconds, unable to believe the coincidence. On her way to work, she noticed a billboard she had never seen before. On it were just two words, "Have faith." It wasn't an advertisement for any product, just a simple message. Once again, she felt it was no coincidence. The day continued, and the coincidences multiplied. A coworker, unaware of anything, mentioned a book she was reading called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, and said, "This book changed the way I see life. It's about how our thoughts attract what we experience." Jessica had never heard of it, but something in her heart stirred. Could this be the answer to her prayer? That night, returning home, she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. The heartfelt prayer, the unexpected messages, the conversation at work. It all seemed like an invisible thread weaving a new path. For the first time in many years, Jessica felt hope, a spark that maybe there was a way out of her limited life. Yet, at the same time, her rational mind questioned, is this just a coincidence? Am I so desperate that I'm seeing signs where none exist? Doubt and faith battled within her. Still, before going to sleep, Jessica decided to repeat the prayer. This time, however, she added something: gratitude. Thank you for what is coming. Thank you for what I cannot yet see, but know is on its way. And that's how, simply and sincerely, Jessica took the first step toward changing her life with the law of attraction, without even knowing the name. She just believed that something greater was listening to her words. What Jessica didn't know was that this prayer, made in tears on the living room floor, had opened the doors to a transformation that would change not only her financial situation, but her entire way of seeing the world. And the next day, in increasingly clear ways, the universe would begin to respond. Have you ever felt that the universe was trying to speak to you through small signs? Have you gone through moments when coincidences seemed to scream that something greater was happening? That's exactly how Jessica Brown, an ordinary woman from the Midwest, began to realize that her heartfelt prayer had not been in vain. That morning after the prayer, Jessica woke up feeling different. The cold of Iowa still bit outside, but inside her was a strange sense of lightness. Fear had not disappeared, the debts were still there, the risk of losing her car remained, but something in her heart felt less heavy. It was as if life had pressed pause on her anguish for just a moment. While making coffee, she turned on the radio, as she did every day. The same station, the same songs, the same announcer. But that morning, the first phrase she heard wasn't part of a song. It came from the host. What you ask for with faith is already on its way. Trust, because sometimes the answer comes faster than you imagine. Jessica froze. Her heart raced. For a moment, she even forgot to breathe. Could it be possible that right after her prayer, she heard exactly that? It didn't feel like a coincidence. It was as if someone had heard her words the night before and was now responding. She smiled to herself, still skeptical, but with a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. On her way to work, another detail caught her attention. A billboard installed weeks ago that she hadn't noticed seemed to glow before her eyes. In large white letters against a blue background, it read, "Have faith." Jessica stopped at the traffic light right in front of the billboard and stared at it. A simple message, but at that moment, it felt like a direct whisper from the universe, as if saying, "You were heard. Keep believing." She arrived at work trying to convince herself she wasn't going crazy, but the signs didn't stop. During lunch, a colleague named Martha casually mentioned a book she had started reading. It's by an author named Joseph Murphy. The title is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. It's amazing. It talks about how our thoughts shape our reality. I think you'd like it, Jessica. Jessica was speechless. The synchronicity was too strong to ignore. Deep down, she felt that this was the direct answer to the desperate prayer she had made. That night, when she got home, Jessica didn't go straight to the shower or start preparing dinner. She sat on the sofa, her mind restless. The signs were too clear: the radio, the billboard, the conversation with Martha. She remembered the words of her prayer: "Show me a path, give me a sign." And now it seemed impossible not to see that the signs were there, knocking at her door. But along with the excitement came doubt. Am I seeing things because I want to believe? Could this all just be coincidence? She knew her rational mind would try to sabotage the experience. After all, Jessica had always grown up in an environment where believing in miracles or the power of the mind was seen as naive. Her parents, tireless workers, always said that the only path was hard work, and expecting anything from fate was a waste of time. Even so, in that moment, Jessica felt that there was more. Before going to sleep, she repeated the prayer from the night before, but this time she made a change. She didn't ask desperately. She expressed gratitude. "Thank you for showing me that I am not alone. Thank you for the signs I have already received. I trust that something good is on its way." As she spoke, a wave of peace swept over her body. She slept deeply, free from the nightmares that had tormented her for weeks. In the days that followed, the synchronicities intensified. Jessica found a used copy of Joseph Murphy's book in a small local bookstore, almost hidden among dusty shelves. When she held the book in her hands, it felt like receiving a gift. Opening the first page, she read a sentence underlined by a previous owner. "What you hold in your mind, you attract into your life." Jessica closed her eyes, moved. The phrase seemed written just for her. It was at that moment that a new journey began. She didn't yet fully understand the law of attraction, but she was already being guided by it. Every sign, every message seemed to push her forward, as if the universe wanted to prove that her heartfelt prayer had only been the beginning of something much greater. And so, a woman surrounded by debt, loneliness, and despair began to realize that the power to transform her life wasn't out there. It was inside her. Jessica would still face doubts, would still fall into moments of disbelief, but what happened in the following days proved that this wasn't just another coincidence. It was the beginning of a real, irreversible transformation. Have you ever had that moment when it feels like you finally find the key to open a door that's always been locked? Your whole life you search for answers, and suddenly a book, a phrase, or even a simple conversation lights up something inside you. That's exactly what happened to Jessica Brown when she found an old, used copy of The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Sitting in her small living room with the book in her hands, Jessica felt she was in front of something different. The yellowed pages, the notes of someone who had read it before, and the underlined phrase on the first page, "What you hold in your mind, you attract into your life," seemed like a direct message to her. She began reading without stopping. Every word seemed to penetrate deep into her mind, awakening memories of her prayer and all the signs that had appeared. Joseph Murphy spoke about the power of the subconscious, about how thoughts and beliefs shape reality. Jessica remembered her childhood in the Midwest, the scarcity phrases from her parents, and began to realize all of that had been imprinted in her mind as absolute truths. For the first time, she understood that it wasn't just bad luck or cruel fate. The hard life she had led could be a consequence of everything she believed about herself and the world. She cried, not from sadness, but from relief, because if her thoughts had created that limited reality, then there was a way out. Change her thoughts to create a new life. In the following days, Jessica delved even deeper. Beyond Murphy, she discovered other names. In an old online video, she heard Bob Proctor say, "You become what you think about most of the time." In another article, she found Neville Goddard with his idea of living in the desired state as if it were already reality. Every author seemed to draw an invisible map, and that map led exactly where Jessica wanted, to a different, full, abundant life. But between inspiration and practice lay a challenge. Jessica had to fight years of limiting beliefs. She still caught herself thinking, "This isn't for me. I'm just an ordinary woman, without education, without money. How can I believe I can change everything?" And that's when she decided to do something simple but powerful. She took an old notebook and began writing positive affirmations, even if she didn't fully believe them at first. She wrote phrases like, "I am prosperous. The universe takes care of me. Abundance flows into my life in unexpected ways." Every day before leaving for work, she read those phrases out loud, sometimes with faith, sometimes just mechanically. But inside, she knew she was planting new seeds. Jessica also began practicing gratitude, something the authors repeated as essential. At first, it was hard to give thanks amid so many difficulties, but she decided to start small. She thanked for the roof over her head, for the hot coffee each morning, for her friend Martha who had mentioned the book. Gradually, she noticed her focus shifting from lack to what was already good. And the more she gave thanks, the more small things seemed to appear. An unexpected discount at the grocery store, a call from an old friend offering a ride on snowy days, even a simple compliment from a customer at the store where she worked. Every detail seemed to say, "Keep going, you're on the right path."
But don't think it was easy. Jessica faced many moments of doubt. There were days when nothing happened, and her rational mind shouted, "This is a waste of time. You're fooling yourself." There were nights when she cried, thinking about her debts, about how she still had no concrete solutions. The difference now was that these thoughts no longer dragged her into despair. She could get up faster because she carried a spark of hope within her, the faith that the universe had heard her prayer and that her part was to believe and align her thoughts. A decisive moment came when she decided to apply a visualization technique. Inspired by Neville Goddard's teachings, Jessica began imagining every night before sleep a scene as if she had already received the answer she sought. She closed her eyes and pictured herself opening a letter from the bank, but this time it wasn't a bill. It was a letter confirming that her debt had been renegotiated and she could breathe easily. At first, it seemed like make-believe, but the more she repeated the scene in her mind, the more real it became. Jessica felt the emotion as if it had already happened. She even smiled to herself, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. This practice began to change not only her thoughts, but also her behavior. On her way to work, she no longer walked with her head down. Her posture was straighter, her gaze more confident. People noticed. Martha, her coworker, said, "Jessica, you look different. You seem lighter. What happened?" Jessica just smiled. She couldn't yet explain it in words, but she knew something inside her had changed. Then, an unexpected event proved that her practices were bearing fruit. One day, she received a call from the bank itself. The manager, who had seemed inflexible until then, said that a new opportunity to renegotiate her debt had arisen. The tone of the conversation was completely different from the cold collection letter she had received before. This time, there was empathy. The proposal was realistic, with payments she could afford. Jessica almost dropped the phone in emotion. When she hung up, she fell to her knees and gave thanks in tears. It wasn't just about the debt. It was the confirmation that what she had been doing was working. That night, writing of her gratitude journal, she didn't just thank for the renegotiation. She thanked for discovering a power within herself she had never imagined. A power that wasn't in external circumstances, but in the way she chose to think, feel, and believe. This was the phase when Jessica realized clearly that the law of attraction wasn't just theory, it was a living law acting in her life. And although she still had much to learn, she knew she had found the key to transform not just her finances, but every area of her existence.
Have you ever noticed how, when we shift the focus of our mind, even the small details of daily life start aligning differently? That was exactly what Jessica Brown began to experience. After her debt renegotiation, something inside her ignited completely. That call from the bank had not just been a financial relief, it had been a milestone, a symbol. For her, it was proof that the universe truly responds when someone believes from the heart. Jessica decided she no longer wanted to live on autopilot, lost in thoughts of fear and scarcity. Now she wanted to live consciously, creating her reality with intention. To achieve this, she established a routine. Every morning, before even picking up her phone or making coffee, she would sit with her notebook and write down 3 things she was grateful for. At first, they were simple. I am grateful for my warm bed. I am grateful for my health. I am grateful for my job. But gradually, her list grew. Each day, she found more reasons to be thankful, even for things she had previously ignored. This practice changed her energy. Instead of starting her day worried about bills and deadlines, she began with a lighter heart, ready to notice the positive. Jessica also intensified her affirmations. She discovered that simply repeating words mechanically wasn't enough. She needed to feel them. So when she said, "I am prosperous, I am abundant, the universe conspires in my favor," she closed her eyes and sought to connect with the emotion of already living it. It wasn't just saying the words, it was embodying the feeling. Over time, these affirmations began creating subtle changes in her life. At work, Jessica was no longer the quiet employee who went unnoticed. Her new inner glow caught attention. Customers enjoyed talking with her, and colleagues began to see her as someone positive and inspiring. Even her boss, who rarely complimented anyone, commented one day,
"Jessica, I like the energy you bring to the store. Keep it up." For her, this was more than a compliment. It was an external reflection of the transformation happening within. But Jessica didn't want to just feel better. She wanted to build a new reality. So she began practicing more detailed visualizations. She didn't just imagine a paid-off debt letter. She saw herself living in a new home, smiling in a larger, welcoming space. She visualized her bank account with a positive balance. She imagined traveling, something she had always dreamed of but never believed possible. At first, it seemed impossible, but with daily practice, those images began to come alive inside her. They were no longer distant dreams, they were experiences her mind accepted as real, and this changed how she felt each day. Jessica also realized she needed to care for her energy not just mentally but physically. She began walking around her neighborhood every afternoon, listening to audios by Bob Proctor and Neville Goddard. These walks were not just exercise. They were moments to connect with new ideas, expand her consciousness, and reinforce her positive beliefs. Eventually, these practices became as natural as brushing her teeth, and the results began to show. An old friend reached out, offering a weekend side job that would increase her income unexpectedly. Jessica accepted without hesitation. Around the same time, a neighbor who was moving offered her some furniture in great condition for free. To many, it might have seemed luck, but Jessica knew these were manifestations. Abundance was beginning to flow into her life in unexpected ways, exactly as her affirmations declared. These events strengthened her faith even more. But Jessica also realized that the universe didn't do everything alone. The law of attraction wasn't just about wishing and waiting. It was about wishing, aligning her energy, and acting with confidence when opportunities appeared. She even began changing her relationship with money. Before, each time she received her salary, fear would take over, and she felt it would never be enough. Now, upon receiving it, she expressed gratitude. Mentally, she said, "Thank you, universe, for this money flowing in my life. I always have enough and more is on the way." This simple act changed her financial relationship. Instead of spending in haste or fear, she began to organize better, pay bills with gratitude, and even set aside small amounts to save. Amazingly, even with the same income, the money seemed to stretch further. But perhaps the greatest transformation was happening within her. Jessica, once anxious, insecure, and full of doubt, was now beginning to trust herself and life. She felt lighter, more open, more connected to something greater. And as a reflection of this, her social life changed too. Negative people who always complained or discouraged her began to drift away naturally. In their place, new friendships emerged. People interested in spirituality, personal growth, and positive energy. It was as if the universe was reconfiguring her social circle to support her new journey. One day, while talking with Martha, the coworker who had recommended Joseph Murphy's book, Jessica said something that marked her own awareness. "You know, Martha, I feel like I've learned a new language, a language not spoken with words, but with thoughts and feelings. And the more I practice it, the more life responds." Martha smiled, and Jessica realized she was no longer alone. There was a network of people who also believed in the power of the mind and the universe. This was one of the greatest gifts of this phase, the sense of belonging. She no longer saw herself as a lost woman in the Midwest, suffocated by circumstances. Now she saw herself as part of something bigger, a consciousness connected to the whole. The more she opened herself to this process, the more opportunities appeared. The extra income from the weekend side job expanded. Her boss, impressed with her dedication and energy, recommended her for a supervisory position, a role she never would have imagined obtaining months earlier when she barely believed in herself. Upon receiving the news, Jessica cried with emotion. It wasn't just about earning more money. It was about proving to herself that the transformation was real, that the prayer made in tears months ago had started a journey of prosperity and expansion. This was only halfway through the journey. Jessica would still face tests, moments of doubt, and challenges, But now she was no longer the same. She had tools, faith, and above all, an awareness that she was creating her reality.
After months immersed in gratitude, visualization, and positive affirmations, Jessica felt as if she had finally found her North Star. Her life, which had once seemed like a series of endless storms, now began to reveal small rays of sunlight. The fridge, which had often been empty, now always contained something simple yet nutritious. Bills, though tight, could be paid without desperate delays. And above all, her heart beat lighter, as if hope had decided to live there. But the truth is that in any journey of transformation, there are moments when the universe tests our faith. Jessica would learn this in the most intense way possible. It all started on a cold November morning. She woke up, did her affirmation routine, had her simple coffee, and headed to work. Upon arrival, she was surprised with the news that the company would undergo cuts. The manager, with a heavy look, announced that the department where Jessica worked would be one of the most affected. It hit her like a bomb. Her mind immediately tried to drag her back to old fear. See, all this law of attraction stuff is just fantasy. Now you're going to lose everything again. For a few moments, Jessica felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her breathing shortened, her throat tightened, and tears threatened to fall in front of colleagues. But in that fraction of a second, she remembered the words she had been repeating daily. I trust that the universe always conspires in my favor. The shock was inevitable, but something inside refused to accept that this was the end. And in that moment, she realized, perhaps this was the greatest test so far. In the following days, while waiting for the company's final decision on who would stay and who would leave, Jessica faced an internal whirlwind. At night, lying in bed, she recalled the prayer she had made months ago. She remembered the relief, the unexpected events that happened the very next day, and the small blessings that had accumulated since. She asked herself, will everything fall apart now, or is this exactly where I need to keep faith? She chose the latter. Even with uncertainty weighing on her, she maintained her discipline. She continued writing in her gratitude journal, even when it seemed there was little to be thankful for. She noted simple things. I am grateful for a bed to sleep in. I am grateful for my neighbor's hug today. I am grateful for the ability to breathe. And with each note, it was as if she was telling the universe, I trust, even without seeing the full path. But the tests didn't come only from finances. People close to her began questioning her new way of thinking. An old childhood friend visiting her laughed when Jessica mentioned the power of visualization. Do you really think that daydreaming with your eyes closed will change anything? She asked sarcastically. The real world is made of hard work, not magic. These words hurt. Inside, Jessica felt the temptation to doubt again. But instead, she chose to smile and respond calmly. I know it might seem strange, but I've already seen things change in my life since I started, and that's what matters to me. This episode made it clear that her path wouldn't be applauded by everyone. There would be criticism, ridicule, even rejection. But she was no longer willing to give up what had brought so much transformation. The climax of this period of trials came 2 weeks later when she finally received the news. Her contract at the company would be terminated. In that instant, Jessica took a deep breath. Tears fell, but this time, they weren't just of sadness. They were tears of surrender. Instead of despair, she felt a strange confidence. If the universe closed this door, it's because something greater is on the way. The following days were challenging. Insecurity knocked at the door, fear of unpaid bills returned, but she decided to use every moment as practice. She wrote affirmations on the mirror. I am guided toward better opportunities. The universe always takes care of me. Everything is working in my favor, even when I cannot see it. And it was precisely in this scenario of tests that things began to shift again. One morning, while walking to the neighborhood bakery, Jessica unexpectedly ran into an old school friend. They hadn't seen each other in over 10 years. The conversation started shyly, reminiscing about the past, but soon the friend said, I work for a nonprofit organization that helps families in vulnerable situations. Would you be interested?
Jessica's heart raced. She didn't know how to react, but agreed to discuss the opportunity further. In the following days, she was called for a simple interview, and soon she was collaborating with the team. The salary wasn't high, but it was enough to ensure stability at the moment. More than that, the environment was human, warm, and full of purpose. On her first day back home, Jessica fell to her knees in her room and cried with gratitude. She felt that each test had been a stepping stone leading her here. Reflecting on this phase, she understood something profound. The law of attraction is not about avoiding obstacles, but about learning to face them with a new mindset. Every trial, every doubt, every critique was actually an invitation to trust more, believe more, and align more deeply. Jessica learned that sometimes the universe removes what no longer serves us to make room for something better, and that tests are not signs of failure, but opportunities to strengthen her faith.
Jessica would never forget the morning she realized, once and for all, that the law of attraction not only worked, but was shaping every detail of her life. Up until then, she had already experienced small victories, coincidences that seemed like answers from the universe, and even signs that confirmed her faith. But what was about to happen would surpass any expectation she could have imagined at the start of her journey. Her work at the nonprofit organization had been an unexpected blessing. There, Jessica felt useful, connected, and valued. Every family she helped reignited her own hope, as if the universe had given her not just a livelihood, but a purpose. Yet deep down, the desire for something greater still lingered. She dreamed not just of surviving, but thriving. She longed for true financial stability, to help her mother who lived in another city, and perhaps to fulfill that old desire of traveling the world. One night, after an intense day at work, Jessica returned home and decided to write a new prayer in her notebook. This time, she didn't just ask for relief from problems. She asked for clarity, purpose, and abundance. With tears in her eyes, she wrote, "Universe, I trust you completely. I know you have brought me here with love and purpose. Now I ask that you show me the next step, the path that will lead me to live the life of my dreams, with joy, abundance, and freedom." She closed the notebook, took a deep breath, and silently repeated to herself, "It's already mine. Thank you, thank you, thank you." The next morning, while having her coffee, Jessica received an unexpected call. On the other end was one of the directors of the organization where she worked. He told her about an international leadership training program for community leaders, sponsored by a global impact foundation. The catch? They were looking for someone committed, resilient, and with a strong sense of purpose to represent the organization in an exchange program in Europe. Jessica was shocked. She, who had spent months without money to even dream of traveling, was now facing an opportunity to see another continent, all expenses paid. For a few seconds, her mind wanted to react with disbelief. This is too good to be true. But then she remembered the words she had been repeating so often. I deserve this. The universe conspires in my favor. The selection process wasn't easy. It involved interviews, leadership assessments, and reports on her community work experience. At each stage, Jessica maintained her abundance mindset. Before interviews, she would close her eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine herself already boarding the plane, already living that reality. She visualized walking through historic European streets, experiencing new cultures, and always felt a wave of gratitude even before receiving the answer. 2 weeks later, the result came. She had been chosen. The scream she let out in that moment echoed through her small house. She jumped, cried, laughed, and in the midst of the emotion, fell to her knees to give thanks. Everything seemed surreal, yet at the same time, deeply natural. It was as if every prayer, every affirmation, every test she had overcome had prepared her for this exact moment. The trip was scheduled for 3 months later, and during that time, Jessica immersed herself even more in her spiritual practices. Every day, she reinforced her gratitude, not only for the trip, but for the entire journey that had brought her here. She realized that the change wasn't just material, it was internal. What had truly transformed her life was the way she now saw herself, a capable, deserving woman, the creator of her own reality.
When she finally boarded the plane, Jessica felt as if she were crossing not just an ocean, but an invisible line between a past of scarcity and a future of infinite possibilities. Outside the window, the clouds seemed to form a white road, leading her toward a completely new life. During the exchange program, Jessica not only learned about innovative social projects, but also met people from all over the world who would become lifelong partners and friends. One of the most remarkable encounters occurred at a conference where she was invited to share her story. With a trembling voice, she spoke of her days of despair, the prayers she had made in tears, and how faith and the law of attraction had changed everything. By the end of her speech, the audience gave her a standing ovation. Many approached her to thank her for the courage to share such a personal experience. In that moment, Jessica realized her story wasn't just hers. It was a living testament that life could change radically when someone chose to trust and align their thoughts with what they desired. Upon returning to the United States months later, her life was irreversibly transformed. She received invitations to speak at universities and institutions, to share her practices and inspire others. The woman who had once cried in front of an empty fridge now inspired hundreds with her journey. And the most beautiful part of all, Jessica understood that the prayer she had made in desperation that distant night had been answered in the grandest possible way. Not just with a change in circumstances, but with a change in identity. She had become living proof that the law of attraction is not just about asking, it's about transforming yourself. Back in the Midwest, Jessica felt she was no longer the same woman who had boarded a plane months earlier. Every step she had taken in Europe, every conversation with people she never imagined meeting, every experience in places she had only seen in photos, all had expanded her worldview. What had once been mere survival was now purpose. She realized that the transformation she had experienced could not remain only in her memories. It was as if the universe had given her a mission to share, to inspire, to be a beacon for those still walking through darkness. Soon, invitations for local talks began to arrive. The first was at a small community college. Jessica took the stage in front of about 50 students. Her hands trembled, her heart raced, but as she began telling her story, from the days she cried in silence to the prayer that changed everything, silence filled the room. Every word seemed to resonate directly with the hearts of those people. When she finished, she received a standing ovation. Some students approached her with tears in their eyes, thanking her for giving them hope at a time when many felt lost. This was only the beginning. Over time, more invitations came. Churches, social institutions, community gatherings. Jessica discovered she had a natural ability to connect with an audience. She didn't speak in complicated jargon or promise magical solutions. She spoke with simplicity, truth, and the power of someone who had lived every detail firsthand. More than speaking, Jessica felt the need to create something lasting. She decided to start a small support group in her city. She called it the Gratitude Circle. Every week, a few people gathered in her living room to share stories, write in gratitude journals, and practice guided visualizations. At first, there were only 5 participants. Within months, the group had grown to over 30. The energy in these meetings was indescribable. People who arrived with heavy expressions began to smile. Stories of overcoming struggles were shared. Small miracles began manifesting in everyone's life. Jessica saw in front of her the reflection of her own journey, proof that when faith is nurtured and the mind is aligned, nothing is impossible. With the group's growth, the idea to expand even further emerged. A friend suggested she record short videos sharing her experiences. At first, Jessica laughed at the idea. She had never imagined herself in front of a camera. But remembering the courage that had taken her to Europe, she decided to try. She recorded her first video on her simple phone, sitting on her couch, sincerely sharing how a prayer had changed her life. The video was shared by friends, then friends of friends. Soon it reached thousands of views. Emotional comments arrived from all over the country. "I was about to give up, but your story gave me strength to keep going. It felt like you were speaking directly to me. Thank you for sharing." These messages filled Jessica with emotion. She realized that the circle of transformation was expanding far beyond her living room. The internet gave her the chance to reach people she might never have met physically. Inspired, she began recording regularly. She didn't seek perfection, only authenticity. She spoke about simple gratitude practices, dealing with moments of doubt, the importance of maintaining faith even when everything seems to crumble. Each video was like an extension of her soul, a way to give back to the world what she had received. The impact was so great that in a short time, Jessica was invited to larger events. A national personal development organization invited her to speak at a conference in Chicago. In a packed auditorium, she shared her story not only as a witness to transformation, but as someone consciously assuming the role of a guide. At the end of her talk, she received an unexpected invitation. An editor present had seen in her journey a powerful message that deserved to be recorded on pages. Jessica hesitated for a few days. After all, writing a book seemed too grand. But she remembered the prayer she had made long ago. "Universe, show me the next step." Perhaps this was the next chapter the universe had prepared for her. While writing, she realized something even deeper. Her story wasn't just about money, work, or travel. It was about reconnecting with her own value, about believing when everything seemed lost, about opening her heart to receive. The book wasn't just about the law of attraction, but about the journey of becoming who you truly are. Months later, the launch gathered dozens of people who had followed her from the beginning. Seeing her mother holding a copy in her hands, emotional and proud, was one of the most memorable moments of Jessica's life. And, amidst it all, she understood. Her true mission wasn't just to transform her own life, but to help others discover that they could do the same. Her purpose had revealed herself. Jessica was no longer just a woman who had once made a desperate prayer. She had become a channel of inspiration, a living example that the impossible can become reality when faith and action